in this wall-shaking episode of MythBusters.
That's the sound!
We're taking combustion and propulsion to their unnatural limits.
Oh!
Can a well-aimed, high-pressure air tank really be a lethal missile? Could 2 compressed air cylinders power the world's fastest speedboat?
Remember, Jamie, experiments like this are 90% mental.
And can an engine fueled by gunpowder do anything but blow itself to pieces? It's fast, it's furious,
It was the lard that did it.
and it's firing on all cylinders. Who are the MythBusters? Adam Savage and Jamie Heineman.
This is gonna kill you.
Between them, more than 30 years of special effects experience.
That's what I'm talking about!
Joining them, Tori Belleci,
Very excited about this.
Carrie Byron,
Look, he cracked into his skull.
and Grant Imahara.
Don't say anything.
They don't just tell the myths, they put them to the test. As Adam loves to demonstrate, there's all sorts of interesting ways to injure yourself on the job. It seems danger is everywhere, but nothing on the workshop floor has quite the deadly potential of a compressed gas cylinder. Accidentally snap the valve, and any tank instantly transforms into a massive rocket with no flight plan. Now, that's a fact, but what's the myth?
Well, we touched upon it a little during Shark Week, but I don't think we finished it.
Oh, I remember that thing.
Yeah, compressed air cylinders, and there are no end to the stories that people tell about the kind of damage that they can do.
Well, this one just made a really big boom, but you're talking about where they take off like a rocket and go through a concrete wall, right?
Exactly, and that is precisely the myth that we'll be testing.
Adam and Jamie have some experience to draw on. Back in their Jaws special, they blew a scuba tank with a wad of C4 explosive. Then shot another tank with a high-powered rifle. It didn't blow up, but it sure went off. And if a cylinder rocket can bend solid steel, what's it going to do to a concrete wall?
As far as I'm concerned, there really is only one way to test this thing.
Well, yeah, we have to fire it at a cinder block wall.
So we're gonna need a selection of air cylinders and some regulators on them. We're gonna need a cinder block wall to fire them into, and some kind of method for catastrophically taking that regulator right off.
And also, we have to figure out how to make sure it actually hits the wall. I mean, what if this thing just kind of goes like that?
I think I want to be outside the building that we're testing this inside of.
Yep.
To test the myth, they'll need to aim the cylinder like a missile, devise some way to sever the valve in a split second, and build a wall to aim at. They'll have to start work on the wall first, so Jamie's assistants, Terry and Tyler, get commissioned as MythBuster Masons.
So I'm gonna set you up, and it's gonna be in your hands to make sure it all happens. So don't screw up. I'll kick your butt.
Walls are useful for all sorts of things, like holding up the roof. So punching a high-speed hole through a supporting wall might not be such a good idea. This freestanding barricade won't be pretty, but it will be, well, great. Meantime, Adam is checking the myth with a man whose whole working life has been spent under extreme pressure. George Ratterman supplies valves and cylinders across the USA, and like most of us, he's heard all of those explosive stories secondhand.
The first thing we've heard is that if you knock off the valve to a cylinder, they can fly right through a brick wall.
Yeah, you know, that is the myth. I've heard that from a number of people. In most cases, you ask them a few more questions, you find out they actually weren't there. I think somebody else told them. And most of the time what the story is, it would take off and it would usually go through a cinder block wall, disappear, go out in the field, or else possibly be found, you know, through a couple more fences or something.
We want to build this rig that shears the valve right off of this. And for the first test rig is a large weight in a guided tube that comes down right on top of the cylinder and knocks it right off. I mean, do you think that's going to work?
I don't know if that's going to work. I would be concerned that you're going to end up with an uneven brake and or only a partial brake, and that's when you're really going to get a spinning effect of the vessel.
And remember, we're talking an ankle-smashing 140-pound steel cylinder. Even a partial shear could send this thing ballistic. It might also start spinning erratically, which Jamie calls rat chasing. To ensure that doesn't happen, the tank needs a long, sturdy guide rail to guarantee it takes off in a straight line.
I've got to build a rig that does a couple of different things. The first thing is that it has to hold this tank steady in such a place that we can drop a heavy weight on the valve and knock it off. The second thing is that same holder is going to guide it as it takes off so that once it gets going, it's aimed in a certain direction and it'll hit the wall at speed, we hope. Good. It looks like it fits fine.
To sever the valve, he's fitting a hinged 10-foot tube to drop a 40-pound steel bar bang on the nozzle. Adams borrowed some T-sized tanks from George, so all they need now is a good, solid target.
I think we got everything.
All right, well, let's get out there and try and blow one of these cylinders through the wall.
This military bunker is the perfect place to test what we all hope will be the world's first and most destructive land torpedo. Seems Terry and Tyler did a first-rate job.
It works for me. I think this will do just fine.
Yeah, that seems nice and solid.
It's not quite as big as the side of a barn, but the question remains, can the cylinder actually hit it?
So I'm thinking that when we set up the rig over by the door, we want to make sure those doors are as closed as we can get them.
Okay, well, they are, in theory, rockets, so we should be careful with them.
Now, careful is a word Adam sometimes has trouble hearing.
Now we do the circus fake here act, right?
Okay.
Welcome to Cirque du Sauvage, a one-time only performance.
That is the power of the mind.
Now to test the power of a 2,600 PSI air cylinder and see if it can shatter a solid brick wall.
I don't mind fingers on the chalkboard, but that's messed up.
To help the rocket on its way, Myth-Turn Jess gets to grips with the lard. Trust Jamie to always have a bucket or two on hand. It's cheap, it's smelly, and it's a great way to reduce friction.
It's important to be judicious about your lard distribution, Jess.
The rig is greased and ready, but will the steel bar have enough momentum to break the nozzle?
This is a 2 by 2 inch solid steel bar, and it weighs, I think, officially a heck of a lot.
That's 40 pounds dropped from a height of 10 feet. It's a classic case of a square peg in a round hole, and that surely deserves a test run.
Piece of a brick right there. All right. That'll keep the end of our piece of steel from getting too damaged.
3, 2, 1.
Oh, yeah. That looks pretty serious.
If a 40-pound bar can do this, just imagine what a 140-pound gas tank could do. If all goes to plan, it's looking curtains for our wall.
Shooting the scuba tank with a 30-06, that was awesome. And I have never felt like we were totally done with that until 10 minutes from now.
So Adam's after some closure. And that opens up a world of possibilities. Now, here's a motor myth that's way overdue for testing. In fact, it's a classic blast from the past. Most modern engines run on gasoline, but it wasn't always the fuel of choice. Some mechanical pioneers favored a more explosive kind of combustion.
Trying to test the claim that you can run an engine using only gunpowder.
Sounds easy enough. Get an engine, add black powder, ignite.
Hang on a minute. There have been a lot of people that have tried this through the ages. Maybe we should try a few of their experiments just to see if we can learn from their mistakes.
Finally, we get to learn from somebody else's mistakes.
Now, common sense tells us the words engine and gunpowder shouldn't even be used in the same sentence. But the respected men of science who designed our 3 test engines clearly thought otherwise. And Tori's not going to learn from anyone's mistakes, because as far as we know, not one of these engines was ever actually built. The gunpowder fuel they plan to use is often called black powder. It's a volatile mix of sulfur, saltpeter, and charcoal. But before the team even thinks about putting this lethal compound in an engine, it's worth finding out if it really has the kick needed to push a piston.
Well, we think there could be some really good reasons why you'd want to use black powder in an engine. To demonstrate that, we're going to do a comparison between black powder and gasoline.
For this first experiment, they custom-build a super-sized piston to test the comparative grunt of gasoline and gunpowder. To check that the seal works, they need an air pressure test. And Carrie can't resist going along for the ride.
3, 2, 1.
Well, the piston works. Operations move out to the car park and into the blast chamber. That's an indication of how much faith they have in the black powder.
Black powder comes with its own oxidizer, so unlike gasoline, which you need to inject a certain amount of air to get it to combust, black powder's ready to go all the time.
Finding which fuel produces more energy is easy enough to measure. A magnet sitting on top of the piston should stick to this metal scale, just where the piston hits the top of its stroke. First, the gasoline. Then a propane flame to vaporize it.
Gas ignition in 3, 2, 1.
The gasoline-powered piston has made its mark.
No, it couldn't have gone up there. So it accelerated it all the way up here.
So will the black powder measure up? Grant's quietly confident.
Our research indicates that black powder has a lot more energy density.
It's measured in grains, which comes from the old Troy system of weights. 1 grain is roughly equal to 1/500th of an ounce.
So you're using 20 grains again?
You got it.
They wait for the flame to ignite the powder.
Ah, there we go.
Wow.
Perfect.
They don't call it gunpowder for nothing.
Wow,
Whoa.
shot the magnet off the scale.
So this is where the gasoline magnet got shot to. And, there is where the black powder magnet got shot to.
Well, that's fairly conclusive.
Black powder does have more energy density than regular gasoline, meaning you need less of it to get the same amount of power.
So it is a sound concept.
But what happens when a sound concept meets an unsound engine? There's still 3 combustible contraptions to put to the test. High-pressure gas cylinders have been around for 100 years, and legends of their destructive potential have been around for 99. But could a ruptured tank really burrow through a brick wall? Back at the bunker, Adam and Jamie are about to find out.
All right, I'm arming the rig.
Arming the rig means unscrewing the protective cap. All that remains is to pull the string that releases the weight. That hopefully guillotines the valve.
All right, ladies and germs. Shearing the compressed air cylinder in 3, 2, 1.
This is close to a worst-case scenario. As feared, the valve was only partially sheared, so the cylinder went absolutely nowhere.
I'm going to wait however long it takes for it to let go of its air, because it's got a damaged valve, and that valve could give any minute and, become a bullet.
It's a very slow leak, so the boys have 45 minutes to stand well back, and revise their plans. Cary, Grant, and Tori are out to test the myth that an engine can actually run on gunpowder. They've shown that black powder definitely has the muscle to move a piston.
This is where the gasoline magnet got shot to. And, there is where the black powder magnet got shot to.
Now to build a primitive kind of proto-engine, specifically designed to run on powder. It was dreamed up by a Dutchman named Christian Huygens more than 300 years ago. His blueprint was the very first to feature a piston in a cylinder. When the black powder ignites, expanding gases are meant to force air out of two valves, creating a vacuum that sucks the piston down.
It looks pretty easy, pretty straightforward. Whether or not it's going to work, that's going to be the hard part.
The design is simple and a lot easier to build now than it would have been in 1680. Total success means getting a near-perfect vacuum. That's a tricky thing to do with so many moving parts, especially when you have to drill a hole for the fuse.
Oh, there's a hole down here. That's not going to give you a vacuum. That's what the problem is.
I mean, we'd have to have that hole there to ignite the black powder.
How are you going to get a vacuum then?
Dude, I'm just going from the designs of Huygens. Should we, like, raise them for the dead? Well, I finished my Huygens black powder engine. So now what we're gonna do, I drilled a little hole at the bottom cap. We're gonna fill this up with some gunpowder, put a remote fuse in there, light it, and see if it does, in fact, raise up our weight.
I am not sure if we're going to get a good enough vacuum, and that's the whole principle that this Huygens engine works on. But, you know, there's only one way to find out.
One thing Huygens didn't specify was how much black powder to use. So they're starting small with 5 grains. This weight is attached to the piston, so when the piston is sucked down, the weight goes up.
Fire in the hole!
In 3, 2, 1.
Okay.
So much for fire in the hole. The weight hasn't budged. In search of more oomph, Tori trebles the charge to 15 grains.
Here we go in 3, 2, 1.
Oh God, did you feel that? The vacuum, it's sucking me in. It was huge.
Yeah, it sure does suck.
But the weight did rise a little, which means the piston moved slightly in the cylinder.
Dude, it totally pulled it down. Look at this.
Well, if it were a vacuum, it would have been holding, like you wouldn't have been able to pull it back.
So they upped the charge from 15 to 20 grains.
In 3, 2, 1.
It looks like Huygens' original draft is just a little bit too drafty.
We have 2 things working against us. Our seal between the piston and the chamber isn't completely airtight. We got it as tight as possible, but there's still some leaks, so we're not getting a true vacuum. And then also our one-way valves, they're not totally airtight either.
Modern machining gave the engine a better chance of success than Huygens could have imagined, and it still didn't work. 1 black powder engine down, 2 to go. But there's reason to be hopeful.
Just running through this experiment, though, you can see why people were so intrigued by the whole black powder engine. It takes so little to create so much force.
And soon they'll see if that force makes or breaks an engine George Cayley had high hopes for. Adam and Jamie are trying to figure out what went wrong with their first attempt to blast an air cylinder through a brick wall.
I can still see it.
Yeah, it hasn't moved.
In best MythBusters tradition, they decide to tinker with just about everything. An extra 30 pounds of lead is shaved down for the trigger. Pencil rods are added to help guide the weight. And never underestimate the benefits of extra lard.
Insert joke here.
So this second time around, we've added more weight. We've lubricated the whole weight system so that it'll be more slippery when it goes down. And then probably most importantly of all, we've moved the valve placement slightly so that the weight when it hits it will hit right on the very tip of the valve, and that'll provide the most leverage and hopefully snap it more readily.
Calm, steady words from a man who's hoping to launch a gas cylinder into the next county.
Here we go, shearing the regulator off the tank. Attempt number 2. In 5, 4, cross your fingers, 3, 2, 1. Yeah! That's the sound! That is a lovely, lovely sound.
The valve has sheared clean off, and that's a very good sign. It looks like the cylinder flew straight and true, but did it have enough thrust to crack the wall?
Oh, God. It was the lard that did it.
At 40 miles per hour, the air tank turned the cinder block to cinders. It even put a fair dent in the wall 6 feet behind it.
It totally.
No way.
I mean, it didn't go all the way through, but it went through this one, and it was going. It's working its way through that one.
I was ready to see this as not possible. I was totally expecting it not to actually work, because it's one of those apocryphal tales, and everyone we talked to had heard the story, but no one knew anybody that it happened to.
You know, this was an optimum situation for this tank. What this tank did is as good as it gets.
My favorite thing is just the perfect roundness of the top of this hole. It also pushed this entire wall back a half an inch.
Although the cylinder was deliberately aimed, you couldn't ask for a more convincing result. So let's call this myth totally and spectacularly confirmed. But the MythBusters can't just leave it there. They plan to double the stakes and push this explosive experiment to its limits. Cary, Grant, and Tori are hell-bent on proving an engine can run on gunpowder.
Fire in the hole!
But could this really be a viable alternative to gasoline? They've already built, tested, and been disappointed by a black powder engine designed way back in the 17th century. So it's back to the drawing board.
You know what our problem is going to be is getting an engine to start and sustain itself using black powder.
I do remember coming across a black powder engine. I think it was Sir George Cayley, the guy who did the first glider, and he was the father of modern aerodynamics. He had wanted to make a flying machine that was completely powered by a black powder engine that reloaded itself. So, I mean, I bet we could find some plans floating around the files somewhere.
Thanks to the graphics department, we can see it would have looked something like this. When the powder ignites, the air expands into the reservoir cylinder, pushing the piston up. Then at the top of the stroke, a bowstring pushes the piston back down. On each rise, the piston turns a stopcock, which funnels more gunpowder into the system. And so the cycle is repeated. And repetition is the key to a working engine.
Maybe the gunpowder engine could be making a big comeback here. We could get rid of all of our fossil fuel dependence.
Knocking up a 19th century engine poses no problems. And luckily, they even have a bow handy, a leftover from the split arrow myth. They string it over the piston, and pretty soon, Cayley's drawing comes to life.
The clever part is that it reloads the gunpowder every single time, hopefully, so that this piston will keep going and we've created an engine.
With the engines ready to go, Cary decides on a quick test.
We need to know how fast we need to get out of the container. We need to know the time between ignition and the engine running.
In other words, how fast will Tori have to run once he's lit the flame? He kicks off with just 5 grains of gunpowder.
This amount of gunpowder is going to force the cylinder up.
Plus the 50 pounds of pressure that the bow's putting on it. I don't think it's going to happen.
And for 40 seconds, it looks like it won't.
Why?
They wait, and they wait.
Well, I think we have sufficient time to out of there.
Oh.
Okay.
Nice.
Look at the smoke ring.
Yeah, let's do it again.
They reset for another test, but Tori's bent on mischief. Unknown to the others, he's added way more powder than he was meant to.
Three, 2, 1.
Is this the combustible black powder? How much was in there?
I put in too much.
Talk about a plan backfiring. Carrie's going off as well.
I'm putting my foot down. You are no longer in charge of handling any of the black powder.
Why? Sorry.
Because you didn't tell us that you put in 15 grains, and I wasn't wearing my ear protection. I'm gonna kick your ass if you ever do it again.
Now that the smoke's cleared on that little incident, the guys know that come the test, they'll have plenty of time to get out of the firing line.
Well, all we're looking for to prove the concept is to have one ignition and then have that reset and do a second ignition. If we can do that, we've proved Kaylee's idea.
I think our worst case scenario and our best case scenario are generally the same thing. A big explosion, a lot of screaming, some fun, hopefully safe fun.
I'm feeling supremely confident, actually, in this device. I think it's at least going to give us 2 cycles. I think it's probably going to give us more, depending on how much gunpowder we put in the reservoir.
They fuel up, or should that be load up?
Remember, you don't want to put more than you need.
Thank you, Tori.
Dose 1, going in.
That's 5 grains of black powder. Will it be enough to get this engine turning over?
Prove it. All right, we're lit.
Whoa!
Okay, it sort of worked. The expanding gases did push the piston up, and the bowstring did reset the piston. But the reload mechanism didn't, well, reload. Still, it's not like the whole thing's gone up in smoke.
It actually worked, and it didn't fall apart. We had one good stroke, but unfortunately, our hopper seemed to have shot or knocked out all of our gunpowder, which flashed when it hit the propane.
The answer? Some aluminum foil over the hopper, which should keep the powder in place. Take 2. Remember, for proof of concept, the engine has to complete at least 2 cycles. Once again, the engine only manages a single stroke. The problem this time is Carrie's reload mechanism can't keep up.
It's happening too fast to dump the black powder in there.
It's not gonna just fall into the little groove really, really quickly if it's just a
Basically, the action is so fast and violent, it doesn't have time to reload. That means a black mark for another black powder engine. Adam and Jamie have already proved the power of a well-aimed T-type air tank. Cylinder 1, wall, nothing. It was almost too easy.
I'm now wondering what we do to harness this kind of power.
Why don't we put a saddle on it and take a ride? What do you think?
No, a speedboat. Let's put a couple of them in a boat and see how fast we can go on the water.
That might be a little safer.
In place of a normal engine, they plan to fit 2 monster air tanks with 5,200 pounds of pent-up pressure between them. Adam has to build a throttle that releases both valves at precisely the same time. And Jamie needs to buy a boat that won't blow the budget. This one's a lean 16-footer, designed for high speed. It's also missing a motor, a dashboard, and a steering wheel.
So I assume it floats, right?
I've never had it in the water, so you're gonna have to go on faith.
So there you have it, a boat that never left the driveway. At least there should be no sentimental attachment.
You've seen the show before, right?
Oh yes, big fans.
So you're aware that there's a strong likelihood that we're going to do something horrible to your boat?
Yes, yeah.
You have any kind of like remorse or anything about seeing your boat, potentially turned into shrapnel?
We're sort of expecting it, that could happen to it.
Selling your boat to the MythBusters must feel something like selling your horse to the glue factory. Still, the deal is struck, and it smiles all around.
Of course, you know that the 2 happiest days of a boat owner's life are the day that you buy a boat and the day that you sell it. I think this is one of those days, so.
And it's one of those days for Jamie, too. There's no feeling quite so rewarding as carefully customizing your very own speedboat.
Always brightens my mood when we get to break out the sledgehammer.
The team has just one day to get through a titanic amount of work.
What I'm gonna do is take this pipe and kind of bolt it on a swivel thing on the transom of the boat. And I also have to build a kind of a wooden paddle thingy to actually go in the water and guide it.
Ah, yes, that would be called a rudder. And they'll need to attach it to a kind of round wheelie what's-it up near the pointy end of the boat. So Adam cuts, belt sands, then spot welds the paddle thingy. They've decided to mount the seat between the two tanks, and for some obscure nautical reason, they're using Adam's posterior as a yardstick.
The minimum is going to be like about 15 inches.
Wait, you're going too far. I'm going right inside of my hands.
Yeah, you're squeezing, and that's 14 inches then.
Why Jamie needs an accurate measure of Adam's buttocks is anyone's guess. But it is time they both got the lead out. So, with a little elbow grease, then some screws and a strong epoxy glue for the baseboard, our dual inboard rockets are finally hauled on board and strapped down tight.
Dude, I love it. I'm starting to get excited.
And although Adam's backside set the standard, it's Jamie who'll be steering the ship.
Go ahead and have a seat.
To ensure these two cylinders fire at precisely the same time, the factory-fitted nozzles are being replaced with ball valves. They'll both be hooked up to a single linkage devised and built by our very own Adam Savage.
We'll have a lever here or here, and we will activate that lever. It'll open up the valves, releasing the pressure, and hopefully what we'll see out of this boat is what we saw out of our tank in the concrete wall experiment.
2 hours later, and that scratch-built throttle is up and running. It's simple, it's purely mechanical, and it works. But there's still one design feature worth considering.
I also want to make some fins. I know it's dumb, but it'll look great if we have, you know, no one will mistake it for anything but a MythBusters boat. I'm thinking of a couple fins shaped like flames.
I have a better idea. How about just square ones? They look fighter plane-like. There'll be like one in each corner in a V shape. We can just cut them on the table saw. It'll be really fast. What do you think?
So far as Adam's concerned, nothing says devastating speed like a pair of flame-shaped plywood tail fins.
Painting.
From the cut to the color, these are all vintage hot rod class. But this time, Jamie's calling the shots. He might not know art, but he knows what he hates.
Tell me you're sorry that I wasted my time.
I'm sorry you wasted your time, and I appreciate your allowing me to make something a little more subtle.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's a trifling tiff that shows Jamie's really taken the project to heart.
He's proud of the boat. He's excited about it, as am I. I mean, it looks really cool. And he wants whatever modifications we make to reflect that instead of to make a joke about it.
But style isn't the big issue here. It's all about the hardware.
This is the business end. It's a half-inch bore, 2,600 PSI coming through each one. It was enough to drive a single 150-pound tank through a wall and halfway through a second wall. The question is two of them enough to drive a rocket boat?
There's only one way to get an answer. Dress Jamie up like a walrus.
I want you to be the boat. I want you to exist as one with the water.
And hope he floats. Our black powder dynamos have already brought 2 antique engines to life. Then watch them die a sad death.
So that leaves us where?
Back at square one.
Not actually. Since we've been dealing with an internal combustion engine, I was thinking, hey, let's try an external combustion engine. Let's get rid of the piston, and we'll make like a water wheel.
Tori's thinking of Thomas Paine's 19th century radial engine, which does work much like a water wheel. But what if we replaced water power with the grunt of gunpowder?
Okay, well, Tori works in the opposite direction of engineering history. How about you and I go find ourselves an internal combustion engine, something that's already a successful engine, and try to adapt it to black powder?
Well, it should work in theory. Sounds good.
While Tori starts work on his black powder wheel, Grant and Carrie will take a regular 4-stroke engine, replace gas with gunpowder, and try to rev it up. Before they do that, 1 or 2 questions need answering.
The first test that we have to perform is to see whether this spark plug can ignite the black powder.
Using a drill, Grant will run the engine manually to see if the spark plug's spark is enough to ignite 5 grains of gunpowder.
Fire in the hole! Hopefully. Here we go.
Woo! Yeah! Woo! It worked!
Okay, good.
Nice!
Good. Great.
Okay, so they know a spark plug can set off the powder. The big question is, how will they get the gunpowder into the engine? An engine normally works by sucking vaporized gasoline into the cylinder. But the grains of black powder are too big to be sucked, so Carrie plans to break them down.
This is a black powder tumbler. This is how you can make black powder. You can put the 3 constituents into here, roll them, and make a fine powder.
And the longer you roll it, the finer it gets.
We thought maybe if we could make it a nice fine powder, something more dusty that could kind of just float in the air, maybe then we could have it suck into the intake.
They put 100 grains in the tumbler.
And voila.
And set it a-tumbling. It takes a little while, so let's see how the wheel's progressing. For his Thomas Paine-designed radial engine, Tori's lined the perimeter of a wagon wheel with metal cups. The expanding gases from the powder, ignited in a separate chamber, will channel into the cups, causing the wheel to spin.
Dude, it's like an 1860s circular saw.
To keep his engine running, Tori has also rigged a hopper to reload the powder after each blast.
Right now I have the black powder dispenser rigged up to the rig here, and I have this little piece of steel. As it rotates, it will push the button in and releasing an amount of black powder.
To test the wheel, Grant blasts compressed air through the system.
That looks pretty good, man.
Yeah. How much PSI was that?
That's just 125 PSI. Black powder's gonna be tens of thousands.
With those kinds of forces in play, they set up Tori's Wheel of Misfortune in the blast chamber. In the first test, they'll start slow, with just 15 grains of black powder per cycle.
Initiating glow plug. Okay, and not enough pressure to get the wheel going.
And even with 70 grains,
wow,
Payne's Wheel of Steel just ain't spinning. Before Tori slides into depression, he wants to improve the compression and try again.
So the only modification that I did is I cut off this big chamber, which is way too big. We weren't getting the compression that we need. I welded on a smaller tube. Hopefully it will give us more compression. It's more like a shotgun, and hopefully we'll get this wheel spinning.
All right, here we go in 3, 2, 1.
This is taking too long.
Oh! Maybe that was a little too much.
No, 70 grains wasn't too much. The whole thing backfired. Gases from the explosion were forced back up into the hopper, which set off all the black powder. And still, the wheel didn't turn.
Oh, no! Wait, don't even go in yet.
They've blown the hopper off, so this experiment is pretty much over.
Not only did it not work, now we don't have a way to continue to introduce black powder into our engine.
Adjusting the charge and the timing might have helped, but the gravity-fed reload system looks doomed to failure every time. Payne's instructions were followed precisely, so it's safe to say that like the other 2 engines that came before, it just doesn't work. But Grant, Carrie, and Tori have one last hope. They'll put gunpowder in a lawnmower engine to see if that cuts the mustard. Grant's mental machinery has already been crunching the gears, pondering a way of getting the black powder into the engine.
Like a
And he's devised an ingenious fuel injection system.
What this is an air eraser, basically a miniature sandblaster. Black powder goes inside of this reservoir, and compressed air goes in here. You set this to wherever you want it to be, and a constant stream of black powder should be shooting out of here.
Out in the blast chamber, they set up for the test. The air eraser is rigged up to squirt the black powder directly into the combustion chamber.
Is anybody else as excited about this as I am?
Once again, Grant uses the drill to turn the engine over. Sort of a crude version of the starter motor you'd find in your car.
Fire in the hole!
A second or two later, the fuel should kick in. In this case, the powder. We're anticipating a throaty throb and a nice dark puff of exhaust gas.
Well, that didn't quite work.
And when Grant takes a peek inside the casing, he sees why.
Is it all gooped up from the oil?
Yeah, there's quite a bit that's actually kind of clumped in a wet puddle.
They're left with an engine enigma.
Our fuel needs to be dry to ignite, and as it comes up into the cylinder, the oil mixes with the black powder and makes a gooey slurry that we cannot ignite.
They've got one last shot. They'll strip down the engine, drain all the oil, and see if the injected powder will ignite before the engine seizes up.
There's a lot of oil in there.
And Tori thinks their chances might be better if they replace the spark plug, which fires intermittently, with this little device.
So what I did is I made this little glow plug, and all it is a little coil of wire. We're going to attach it to a battery. It'll glow red hot, and that'll be a constant source of heat to ignite the black powder every time it enters the chamber.
He's a bright spark, isn't he? Right. It's the moment of truth. Will this four-stroke engine go on gunpowder, or is it the end of the road for this myth? Gentlemen, start your engine.
Glow plug. And black powder.
Nothing. Zilch, zip, and bupkis. In desperation, they put 5 grains of gunpowder directly into the cylinder and try again.
3, 2, 1.
Yeah, we got a fire.
Come on! Baby.
We did get one push. We got one charge.
We got one fire.
push.
Yeah, we got
Fired
one
once.
ignition.
Even a working engine won't work with gunpowder. And for that, we should probably all be grateful.
Do we really have to talk about this one?
No. But we will anyway. But you can see why, over the ages, it was so tempting to use black powder. It's got such high energy density, it would make a good fuel.
But the stumbling block is getting the black powder into the piston and actually igniting it.
Not to mention that these are dangerous.
So you ready to wrap this one up?
Yep.
Claim it.
Busted.
Easy. Busted.
Busted.
So just how much fun can one man have in a souped-up speedboat? By the looks of it, plenty. Adam and Jamie are ready to live out the ultimate boyhood dream, fitting 2 potentially explosive air cylinders to an unsuspecting ski boat, then cutting loose.
That's what it's going to be like.
It's not a fully fledged myth, but after the success of an air cylinder blasting through a wall, it's impossible to resist.
It's supposedly about taking us all the way to the end of the myth, but come on, I think we all know that it's an excuse to have some fun with some big, high-powered rockets.
Step 1 is getting our stunt skipper installed in his wetsuit without having to blur some parts of your screen. Step 2 is filling the cylinders in the boat with compressed air from the truck.
These tanks are actually filled with geese, and they're complaining.
Was that a joke? I think that was a joke. Fascinating.
And step 3 is seeing if Adam and Jamie can finally float their own boat.
The worst case scenario, I have to say, is
is that one of the tanks blows up and the shrapnel ends up ripping through Jamie's flesh and killing him.
So much for the pep talk. It's a good rule of thumb that support staff should be seen and not heard.
Jamie, so when we release you, we're going to pull off to the right-hand side and you're going to steer to our left. Okay?
You mean I'm going to steer off to port?
Yes, you're going to steer off to port, you old salt. And we'll be to the starboard. What, left and right isn't good enough when there's water around?
There's also plenty of spectators around, so they'll have to be careful.
We've got a tour over here of kids in small boats. We're going to tow you past that tour before we release you.
When all seems safe, the rocket boat is finally cut loose from the mothership. And remember, they're dealing here with twice the pressure used earlier to smash a brick wall. Jamie's ready, and the mechanical throttle is gently nudged forward in the kick-ass direction. Oh dear, lots of noise and lots of spray. But that brief burst of speed clocked in at just over 5 knots on the speed gun. And the boat was propelled a mere 120 feet.
Well, that was a whole lot of nothing.
But Adam is more upbeat.
That was excellent. I mean, it didn't do anything really important, but it was cool looking.
Okay, there's no doubt we've just seen one of the best rooster tails this side of a barnyard. But let's face facts. Jamie can probably swim faster than 5 knots. The boys have given themselves one more chance to prove the concept, and they're ready to float some ideas.
We may be able to optimize this a little bit if we choke the outlet down, and also we're going to try to drop it into the water a little lower, because I'm not sure the physics on this, but my hunch says that the air pushing more against the water instead of against just air would give us a little more oomph.
It's a bold decision that involves a lightning pit stop and a radical refit of the outlet valves. The full force of all that compressed air will now be released underwater.
Jamie is also not going to go gingerly with the throttle this time. He is just going to push it all the way forward on the first go, and just expend all of the power trying to get up to speed and stay at a speed and actually travel more than, 120 feet.
Tanks are refilled and the boat's back in position. It's now sink or swim. And Adam has some, well, vaguely helpful words of encouragement.
Remember, Jamie, experiments like this are 90% mental. I want you to be the boat. I want you to exist as one with the water. Think about the boat planing, the physics involved. Feel them in your body. Are you ready?
What?
I said just go for it.
The rocket boat is unleashed and its anchors away. Let's assume that hysterical laughter is not a good sign. In fact, the boat traveled only half the distance of its first run.
It was about the same as the other one, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't even close.
As for the speed gun, it was hardly worth installing the batteries.
Well, I think that would proverbially be that.
This lavish maritime experiment turned out to be a spectacular failure. Maybe it's time Jamie invested in a good, reliable outboard.
I don't think he even made it like 60 or 70 feet that time. I don't know if you can calculate it in miles per hour. It'd be more like miles per day.
So we have to ask ourselves, what's the wash-up?
So, Jamie, how are we going to wrap this one up? What do you call it?
Well, we did get a tank to blow through a cinder block wall when we knocked the valve off, so that's confirmed. I mean, there were documented cases as well.
And you can strap some air tanks to a boat and give it a little bit of power, but it's not that practical. It's not real power.
Yeah, we need to go for the hydrogen and light it.
It's another episode. We've got to let this one go.
On this episode of MythBusters,
Don't tell them which ones we have.
Adam and Jamie outside their comfort zone in a footballing myth.
That we would, aspire to not be idiots.
They head for a hangar and hurl Hail Marys. Bang! To see if hang time really is higher with helium.
I love consistent data.
And Grant, Carrie, and Tori take a pot shot at a deadly myth.
Oh!
As they aim to catch a bullet in their teeth.
Oh my God, it blew his teeth out.
Who are the MythBusters? Adam Savage and Jamie Heineman.
Aren't tracer rounds illegal?
Between them, over 30 years special effects experience.
That's what I'm talking about.
Joining them, Tori Belleci,
Science is fun.
Carrie Byron,
Guess what I did today?
and Grant Imahara.
You guys ready for this?
They don't just tell the myths, they put them to the test.
Adam, we have a sporting myth.
Only our second one, and it's surprising given that we're such jocks.
Exactly my thoughts.
Weren't you captain of the flag team in Indiana back in like the 20s?
No. Wrong, Jamie. The myth is that if you fill a football with helium and you kick it or throw it, that because it's lighter, it'll have more hang time and therefore it'll travel farther.
Oh, the old helium football trick. Let's get going.
Helium is lighter than air. That's the scientific cornerstone of this sporting conundrum. Fill a blimp with it and you'll float. But will it make a football fly further? It's game day at the Science Bowl, San Francisco City College.
Been a long time since you walked on the gridiron, huh? I know I'm out of shape when just walking to the end of this field makes me out of breath.
Luckily, the kicker for today's test is fighting fit and ready to punt his way into the MythBusters Hall of Fame.
Yeah, this is our punter, Tim Sonnenberg.
Tim, Adam, nice to meet you.
Hi, Tim. Jamie.
Nice to meet you.
So, think you can give us a couple lessons in kicking the football?
I've got a few tips for you guys today.
The myth that we've heard and that we're testing is that filling a football with helium will somehow make it fly farther than just a regulation football. Have you heard that?
Oh, that's been going on for eons, as far back as I can remember, and I don't even know where the heck I got it from. But that's been the rumor for years.
What kind of improvement do you think helium would lend?
I believe helium would add a good 5 to 10 yards to a good kick.
Tim's confident, but is his opinion based on science or urban myth? He's about to find out. But first, a crash course in kicking. There's two types of kick in American football. The kickoff features the end-over-end variety, which gives maximum hang time and is hard to catch. The punt is for distance and accuracy. By imparting spin to the ball off the foot, this spiral kick generates less drag and so flies further, making it spot on for this myth.
Jamie, I know it's been like 40 or 50 years, but you ready to put on your old armor?
And what is the point of this? I could see you bringing some shoes, but the helmet and the shoulder pads are going to be for what purpose?
It's just amazing to me that you still don't realize we're shooting a TV show.
Well, yeah, but we would, aspire to not be idiots.
And yet we would fail. All right, let's start the lesson. Okay, so walking through like I'm your kid nephew, it's about my skill level. Dude!
That's amazing. That was a beautiful spiral.
You made that look way too easy.
It is, if you walk into it.
A couple of handy hints, and the rookie's ready for his premier punt.
Just normal steps.
All right.
And before you can say hang time,
no spiral.
The ball's back on the ground.
All right, your turn.
Bad. Okay.
Now let your foot go kick the ball.
Sports fans may want to look away now.
Not very good.
It's all coming back to you, isn't it?
Yeah.
That was so bad, it's worth another look.
Well, I totally sucked at that, but, Football's not my sport. In fact, there really aren't any sports that are mine.
It seems that just as white men couldn't jump, MythBusters can't punt.
Oh, I see.
Except in this case, there's no twist to the tail. They just can't.
This is hard. If I was doing the kicking for this test, we would be able to draw some conclusions, and those conclusions would be that I suck at kicking.
Oh!
I think we should get Tim to kick the balls for us because he's really good.
Makes sense. Tim takes care of the kicking, while Adam and Jamie take care of the nerding.
I brought a bunch of meters for the weather conditions, just to make sure, you know, we've got comparisons on everything, and I think we should just keep on checking the wind speed.
Okay, well, while you're doing that, I'll break out the brand new regulation balls. They're filled to exactly 13 psi, which is what is required.
Oh, excellent.
Never been used.
But is that 13 psi of helium or air?
This ball feels a little light. Is it filled with helium?
Well, we couldn't tell you that, could we? Or we'd skew the results. So we'll tell you afterwards. How's that?
Here we go. Test number 1, punt number 1. Tim does his best to produce 5 identical kicks. Downfield, Adam records the distance of each one. For test number 2, the balls are emptied, then refilled with the other gas. Once again, it's crucial to the experiment that its identity remains secret.
Okay, these are ready. Don't tell them which ones we have.
Let's see how far they go.
Yeah.
4 yards.
Tim puts up another 5 punts, this time with helium-filled balls. So, what were the results? And did he spot the difference?
From your standpoint, what do you think between the first 2 sets of balls, what were you kicking first and what were you kicking second?
It felt like the first set of balls I kicked were filled with helium.
Your first set of balls were actually regulation balls filled 13 psi with just regular air.
Wow. I would have thought that those were the helium balls.
Well, the second set was the helium balls.
That's surprising.
What's more, even though Tim didn't pick them, the helium balls did travel further than the air-filled ones by an average of 3 yards. But is that data reliable?
It looks like it supports the myth that helium does fly farther than air, but unfortunately, kick to kick, we're looking at a difference of like up to 20 yards sometimes. And when I see a difference of that between 2 data points, I just don't look at my average as being a real number. I'm not ready to call this one busted, plausible, or confirmed yet. I don't think we have enough real data.
3,
Back at the MythBusters lot,
Aim for my stomach, not my face.
it's a splatterfest. Carrie's up before the paintball firing squad, but she's taking it on the chin.
No! Yeah, I'm fine.
Is this just pointless but enjoyable victimization? Or might there be some myth-busting in there somewhere?
Some days, science is fun.
My guess? A little of both.
Grant, what myth have you brought us today?
The myth is you can catch a bullet that's fired at you in your teeth.
I always thought that that was just a magic trick that people did.
Well, there are people out there that claim that they can do it.
So what are you guys gonna do? Tori and you are gonna fire guns at each other's faces and get some target practice?
Well, almost.
That's exactly what the boys in the bullet-catching business claim they do. Here's a clip from the 1952 show You Asked For It.
Would you now give the bullet to Mr. Shores? We'd like to have him place it in the gun. And then in firing position, if you will.
Ready? Aim. Fire.
Make up your own minds. Is this Superman in disguise, or did he have more than just his tongue in his cheek?
Could I see that bullet, please?
Carrie, Grant, and Tori are going to find out. They'll run a 3-part experiment. First, they'll run tests to see if teeth can withstand the force of a bullet. Next, put human reflexes under the gun to see if they're quick enough to catch a bullet.
That's a little scary.
And just in case they find that shock horror, it is only a conjuring trick, they're going to try and build a rig to catch a bullet traveling at almost 1,000 feet per second. First up, the teeth strength test. And Tori's found a set of dentures.
That's so gross. We got those from the mortuary. So what we're gonna do is put a bullet in a pair of teeth with average biting strength and give it the amount of kinetic energy that a bullet would have if it were fired from a gun. And we'll see if the jaws can hang on to the bullet, then you are able to dissipate that kinetic energy. If you're not able to dissipate it, the bullet will come flying out of the teeth.
Here's the plan. The bullet will be clenched in the dentures, which will be held shut using air pressure from a pneumatic cylinder. A weighted pendulum will swing down to strike a metal pin, which will hit the bullet, delivering the same amount of force as a shot fired from a gun. Grant explains.
Now, of course, the bullet is very small and it's traveling very fast. We won't be able to have whatever we're making travel quite that fast. So we have to compensate by having it be much heavier.
Something else to chew over. The teeth have to be biting down on the bullet with regular human force. But how strong is that? Tori wraps his jaws around a force gauge.
117.10.
His best bite, 117 newtons, or 85 pounds of pressure. Grant calculates that to match the kinetic energy of a bullet, the pendulum must carry a 50-pound load and swing from a height of 4 feet. It's enough to set your teeth on edge. Grant pressurizes the choppers to match Tori's bite strength.
It's like a hillbilly now.
And all these jaws want for Christmas is their 2 front teeth. Time for a rethink. Take 2, with the bullet at the back of the jaws. The pin is lined up to hit the slug head on. 50 pounds comes swinging in from 4 feet.
Wow. Is the bullet still in there?
Bullet's still in the teeth.
Let's take a look at the high speed and see exactly what happened.
Okay.
The bullet's still there, and the teeth, apart from 1 or 2 chips, are still intact.
That is some really unexpected results. I wouldn't have predicted that in a million years.
The dentures with Tori's bite force were actually able to hang on to the bullet, which is a very surprising result. And it lends a little bit of credence to something that so far we are all assuming is an illusion.
Hanging on to the bullet's one thing, but you have to be fast enough to catch it in the first place.
Hi.
Could anyone really bite down on a speeding slug?
Which one of you is Granny Mahara?
The team's going to test human reaction time to a pistol shot.
As soon as you hear or see something that tells you that I fired the gun, you're gonna try to close down your mouth and see if you could physically possibly catch it.
By the way, so Grant doesn't die, they're using blanks and a bulletproof plastic sheet.
In 3, 2, 1.
We all know that Carrie's quick on the draw when it comes to opening her mouth. But it turns out she can shut it fairly smartly, too.
Carrie had the fastest reaction time with 9 milliseconds.
Now, is that with or without the countdown?
That is with the preemptive countdown.
Well, I mean, we've shown that it's possible that you could time it so you could grab the bullet, but that's a total crapshoot. I mean, it's luck. So why don't we do a test where we could see if you could actually grab a projectile?
A projectile like, oh, I don't know, a paintball, perhaps.
I think you got a real good chance of catching these.
Tori's going to fire paintballs from a distance of 25 feet, and Carrie's going to try and catch them.
Yeah.
Now, we've already seen what a well-aimed paintball can do.
I know you want to keep aiming at that spot, but can you not aim right at that spot again? It hurts a lot.
In a previous episode, Adam and Jamie held a paintball duel to see who could withstand the most pain and claimed the title of Ultimate Mythbuster.
This sucks. I don't want to do this anymore.
Needless to say, Adam lost.
I keep forgetting that you're, like, actually have no heart or soul.
And given the smirk, neither has Tori. It might pay to don some suitable protection.
It comes with buffness.
Undaunted, Carrie steps up to the plate.
Suddenly, this seems sort of like a bad idea.
You're gonna be fine, Carrie. You're just gonna have a few welts. You're gonna love it.
Do a test fire. I want to see how fast it goes.
You got it.
The answer, 300 feet per second.
Holy! It's gonna take a few trials here.
That's okay. I don't mind. I could do this all day.
You know, here on MythBusters, one tries not to approach any experiment with a preconceived notion as to the outcome.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Fire.
But in this case, one thinks one can make an exception.
Fire.
That was close.
Really?
No.
I can't even see it.
If you can't catch this, there's no way you're gonna be able to catch a bullet.
At 200 miles per hour, a paintball is only traveling 1/3 the speed of the slowest bullet.
I can see it coming at me, but by the time I can process the fact that my hand needs to grab onto it, it's already hit me.
I'll see if I can't take the force from the projectile and stop it from breaking.
That's it.
Yeah, go ahead. Tell us how that works out. 3, 2, 1. Oh, that looked pretty cool.
Oh!
Getting shot in the hand is one thing. Palming a paintball is quite another. The guys better think quick if they want to catch a bullet.
If you can't do it with your hands, there's no way you're gonna be able to do it with your teeth.
Adam and Jamie have been taking a punt at the myth that a helium-filled football will fly further than an air-filled one. But even with a specialist kicker, the data were all over the park. Back at M5, the guys are having a rethink. And that done, they have a discussion.
The best place kicker in the world really can't make a football land in the same spot twice in a row. There's just too much variance between the kicks.
We need to go back to the shop and get a lot more scientific about this.
Well, let's look at the very first part of this. Does helium actually make a football lighter? Let's carefully weigh some helium-filled footballs and some air-filled footballs and see what, if any, difference there actually is.
To weigh gases, they'll need some precision equipment. And they have a gem of an idea, a specialist store for jewelers.
We're here to purchase a scale that's extremely accurate. And these kinds of places specialize in jewelry and such, so, you know, stuff like gold, you kind of want to be accurate about how much it weighs.
With helium versus air in the balance, the scales must be super sensitive.
Think we should weigh my wedding ring?
Oh, that's huge.
Look at that, 11 grams of solid gold.
Let's see whether it will pick up the paper. Ooh,
nice.
It measures a Post-it.
Well, it goes to 1/10 of a gram. That's 0.00025 pounds.
Yeah.
That's like 1/4 of a thousandth of a pound. All right, we'll take it.
The jewelry store job goes like clockwork, and it's back to M5 for the weigh-in. Footballs can vary in weight by up to 7 grams, so they number the balls and record their dead weight.
Ha-ha!
Then they fill them up with the regulation amount of air, 13 psi.
Well, this is actually pretty cool. I'm getting almost exactly a difference of 3.2 grams, which means we're filling this with 3.2 grams of air.
I never would have guessed that. I would have thought it was like 1/10 of a gram, maybe.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Air weighs more than you'd think. Put a cylinder around the Eiffel Tower, and the air inside will weigh more than the tower itself.
Food for thought. Okay, so what's next?
I think we have to deflate these and fill them with helium next.
As everyone knows, inhaling lighter-than-air helium gives you a high-pitched voice. It's predictable, juvenile, and dangerous behavior. In other words, irresistible.
It's weird talking without any oxygen in your system. Wow!
You could die that way.
Yeah, I know. I always have to stop when my lips get blue.
So, 2 issues there. Helium makes your voice sound funny, and it can kill you.
Yeah, that seems just fine.
First, the funny bit. It's all to do with the speed at which the sound of your voice travels through air.
I reject your reality and substitute my own.
And through helium.
I reject your reality and substitute my own.
Helium is only half as dense as air, so sound travels through it almost twice as fast. This doubles the frequency, making it sound squeaky. The second issue is much simpler. Humans don't work on helium, so don't try it at home. Back at the weigh-in.
It's actually almost 7 grams different between the helium-filled football at regulation pressure and the air-filled football at regulation pressure.
And what's more, it turns out that even an empty ball weighs more than a helium-filled one.
Even though I know a helium balloon will float up in the air because helium's lighter than air, I didn't expect that helium, even a small amount like 3¼ psi of helium, would actually reduce the weight of the football by probably almost a full percentage point.
It doesn't sound much, but if the myth's correct, the weight loss provided by helium could turn an ordinary kick into an extraordinary one.
Kick this one out the back of the end zone again.
Amazingly, our researchers might have actually turned up the source of this myth, which is a punter who played for the Oakland Raiders from '73 to 1986 by the name of Ray Guy.
Yeah, his punts stayed in the air so long and they went so high that the NFL actually had to come up with a statistical term for it, which they called hang time.
During the course of the day, everything I hit was at least 5 seconds or better hang time, and it was going exactly where I wanted to go.
Yeah, as the story goes, during a game in the '70s against the Houston Oilers, one of his punts hung so long in the air that the ball was immediately collected and tested for the presence of helium.
Once I hit it, the ball just took off, and it seemed like it just stayed up there forever. Billy, a few years later, told me that Bum hollered at him and told him, said, "Hey, get that football. We're going to take it back and have it analyzed," because they thought I had helium in it, you know, which we have pretty much a standing joke about it now.
There was no helium, but despite the lack of evidence, the myth persisted, which is why it's found itself on this show. That's enough historical background. Time for a gratuitous explosion.
The question we're going to answer here is, how much pressure can a football actually take before it bursts? We don't really need to answer that question, but, you know, we get to blow something up. Okay, are you ready? There we go.
80, 90. Oh! That was great.
Oh, look at that.
That was about 110 pounds per square inch.
So there's your answer. At 110 psi, you'll lose a football.
That's really cool.
But gain a hat.
What are you doing?
I put everything on my head.
The bullet in the teeth myth hasn't quite bitten the dust, but it's shot full of holes. Now, Grant's come up with a plan, and he's aiming high.
I think we need to build something that'll be able to catch a bullet.
And so you're going to build some kind of a rig that'll catch it?
Yeah, be able to sense when the bullet comes and time it so that it closes the teeth at the exact right moment.
He's planning a 25-foot course with a gun at one end and a set of metal jaws at the other. When the gun's trigger is activated by a remote firing mechanism, it sends a signal to a digital timer on the pneumatic jaws. By calculating how long it takes for the bullet to reach them, Grant can program a delay so the jaws fire at precisely the right moment. Building the rig isn't the problem. Grant has plenty of experience with remote controls and pneumatic actuators from his robot designs. Like great comedy, the secret's in the timing.
Okay.
Using the high-speed camera, Grant works out that the bullet will reach the jaws in just 23 milliseconds. The punchline is that's exactly how long it takes for the jaws to shut.
Dude, it's beautiful.
Excellent.
So the next question is, how long does it take the bullet to exit the muzzle after the trigger has been squeezed?
I have a little light in there that turns on when I trigger it. So we're going to see the time delay between when the light turns on when a bullet actually comes out of the muzzle. 3, 2, 1. That's 43 milliseconds. So maybe I do trigger them both at the same time, and it'll be really close.
While Grant crunches the numbers, Tori wants a second bite at the pendulum test. He's got doubts about the dentures. The test was a kick in the teeth for the skeptics, as the acrylic choppers coped with the kinetic energy of a speeding bullet. But real teeth might not be so resilient. They've got a hard enamel coating, but the inside is a soft material called dentin. So, where to get some real choppers to chew on?
Well, we can always go get a pig head. We could, take the jaws from the pig, and that would be a much better representation than the plastic teeth. I mean, they're a lot stronger than a human's, but I mean, if we can prove that the pig head can't hold a bullet, then there's no way a human could.
Can we find a story where we don't work in dead animals? For real.
Sure, Carrie, when pigs fly.
Not it. I don't want to go pick them up.
Not it, I got something else to work on.
Which makes Tori lucky last. And he's the only one with the stomach to cut out the jaws. Tori gets gory.
Carrie, did you want the snout? Because I was going to throw it away unless you wanted...
That is probably one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen, and I'm trying to stay in my happy place.
As they say on the cooking shows, here's one we prepared earlier.
I have my jaws and my teeth from the pig, and I have the cylinder through it. All I have to do now is mount it to our rig, and then we'll test it, see if it can actually hold a bullet.
Biting the bullet's not a problem, but the teeth in front of it have to be filed down so the steel rod has a clear path to the slug.
That is the creepiest looking rig. You made a meat puppet.
Carrie's trying to stay composed, which is more than can be said of the pig's remains under the hot television lights.
It's getting ripe. The pig head's starting to smell ripe.
Time to unleash that pendulum once more. With 50 pounds of weight from a height of 4 feet, it matches the force of a bullet.
3, 2, 1. That was cool. See the bullet? It flew right out of his mouth.
A pig jaw is a lot stronger. It has a lot more integrity than a human jaw. This is a great test because if he couldn't hold onto a bullet,
there's no way a human could.
No way a human could hold onto a bullet.
Quite probably. But just to be sure, let's see what happens when the pendulum is replaced by a .357 Magnum with a 38-wad cutter round.
Loaded.
An old shipping container is now the MythBusters' very own firing range.
We're all good to go. We have a bullet in the pig's teeth, biting down at my bite pressure. It's a lot like what we were doing with the pendulum test, except we're going to be firing a live round onto the bullet that's in the teeth. All right, here we go. Fire in the hole in 3, 2, 1.
That settles it. If a bullet does this to a pig's pegs, then a human jaw has no chance.
Oh my God, it blew his teeth out.
Wow.
It just blew his teeth out.
Here's one of them.
Oh, God.
So, what have we learned from all this? Well, one thing's for certain. The so-called most dangerous trick in the world is just that. A trick, not a stunt.
I have one little warning. This is serious. 4 men have been killed in attempting this feat. It's a neat trick, but let's leave it right there.
Good idea. Let's face it, it's humanly impossible to catch a speeding bullet. But on this show, that's no reason not to try. And Grant's bullet-catching rig is right on track. In the high-flying myth of the helium football, Adam and Jamie have been weighing up the differences between air and helium.
Not surprisingly, we found the first element of truth in this story. A helium-filled football is shockingly lighter than a football filled with air.
Yeah, well, now we need to determine whether that translates to a farther distance when it's kicked, right?
Yeah.
Well, more hang time.
Absolutely. It's time for an indoor test. Indoor, some large building where we can eliminate the weather variable.
And maybe we'll get one of those kicking machines to eliminate the human element in the kick, which is probably a really big thing.
Oh, yeah. The MythBusters mechanical boot arrives.
That is scary.
It's usually used for catching practice, but on this special team, it's the big game kicker.
Boom! Pretty scary thing.
Looks dangerous.
Jamie sets up a target. At its 1st and 10. That's almost an exact replica of Adam's throwing arm. For the 2nd down, he turns up the muscle.
Ready?
Yeah.
Hey, we hit the target. But it's still not, we're not getting a spiral.
Jamie consults the manual. Adam dives straight in. That's how things work around here.
Hey, that's a spiral.
Was it?
It was a beautiful spiral.
Pretty soon, Adam's as accurate as a seasoned quarterback.
Now he's all excited.
I am excited.
Who knew sport could be so much fun?
Well, that's good enough for me. What's next?
What's next is we take that machine and a bunch of these balls and some helium and some air out to an indoor stadium.
It's got to be indoors, away from the weather, and it's got to be big. So the guys head for a location that's got all the space they need. NASA's Ames facility at Moffett Field. This hangar should be big enough.
Wow! I get vertigo just from the sheer size. It's like not moving the way it should.
The hangar's so big, the airplanes parked in it look like toys.
And this is the largest building I have ever been in. It's about 230 feet to the ceiling. It's nearly 1/4 mile long, and they park blimps in these things. Even though a building this large can develop its own micro weather systems, and I'm not kidding, there is no breeze, there's no wind, so it's the perfect place to test our football throwing machine and see if there is a difference in the hang time between helium and air and other stuff.
First, they assemble today's MVP, the kicking machine. Then Adam paces out the test area.
That's the length of a football field, 100 yards. I can't imagine it's going to fire farther than this.
That's kind of like a little too up in the air, I think.
Either the kicker's having an off day,
That was not a spiral at all.
or there's a flag on the play of this myth-busting method.
It landed like this. This is a problem. We got to work this one out. The way it's going now, it's like a total disaster. They're just landing.
All over the place.
Yeah, one's like 50 feet, the other's 200 feet.
I was keeping my hand on every
Let's
single
try
one.
that without that.
Okay.
Ready? I'm gonna try this one.
Yeah.
It actually looks like a good spiral.
Yeah, it looked pretty good.
The hands-off approach is the way to go.
Now it's one of the farthest throws yet.
That's beautiful.
And by jury-rigging a firing mechanism with a bungee cord, they maximize their chances of consistency.
Oh, I love it. This is beautiful. These are all landing just where I want.
With each kick on the same ballpark, the first test can begin.
Air 13 PSI bungee cord. Ball number 1.
Doesn't get better than that. Hit the 200-foot mark. Okay, ready?
Adam marks the landing spot of each ball. All 10 are right on the money. Or close enough, at least. To get a suitable sample size, they shoot off a second set of 10, to Adam's satisfaction.
Very, very happy with that. That bungee really evened everything out. There's still a couple of anomalies, but out of 10, I only had 3. That's good enough for MythBusters.
The myth that you can catch a bullet in your teeth has been shot to pieces. But Grant's been building a rig that can do the trick for real. His pneumatic gnashers are ready to bite the bullet. And with live ammo involved, the guys head for the firing range of the South San Francisco Police Department.
Oh man, this brings back memories.
Exactly 25 feet right there.
Chief Firearms Instructor Sergeant Alan Normandy has agreed to supervise. He's aided and abetted before when the guys busted the blown away myth. It was Sergeant Normandy who finally knocked Buster off his perch. Unfortunately, he's also had first-hand experience with would-be bullet catchers.
I've seen the aftermath of someone who's attempted that. The damage is fairly devastating. At a distance of 20 feet or so, I would imagine that you're going to have primarily just a puncture wound with a pistol round, but still certainly go through the mouth cavity and whatever's behind it without much difficulty.
In this case, the mouth is made of metal. Grant's robotic jaws are designed to snap shut with just the right amount of delay to catch a speeding bullet fired from a remotely triggered gun 25 feet away.
The range is yours.
Okay.
Then load it up.
Do you want... That looks pretty good.
First, they need to run some tests. They fire a few rounds at the target to make sure they're hitting the same spot every shot.
All right.
It went right through the same hole. That's good.
Then they position the jaws in the firing line.
Pressurizing the system.
And Grant activates the pneumatic actuator, which will snap them shut.
And we are armed.
Then he captures them closing on high-speed camera.
3, 2, 1. Nice.
And works out to the millisecond how long it takes them to shut.
I know how long it takes from when I trigger the gun to when the bullet comes out of the muzzle. I know how long it takes from when I trigger the teeth to when they actually close, and I know the distance and the speed of the bullet. That's going to tell me exactly how long I have to wait to trigger the jaws so that the bullet gets there exactly as they close.
Grant does the math based on a bullet traveling at over 850 feet per second.
So 857 feet per second.
And he comes up with a delay time on the jaws of 82 milliseconds.
Okay.
He punches in the magic number so that 82 thousandths of a second after the gun fires, the teeth will start to close. Everything is set.
Sergeant Normandy, may I load?
Absolutely, go ahead.
For the first time ever, the bullet in the teeth trick is ready to be tried for real.
3, 2, 1. Whoa!
You hit it.
Wow. Wow.
It looks like it closed a little too soon.
Tori's right. But that's pretty good for a first try.
Looks like the jaws are closing a little soon, so I'm gonna increase my delay by 4 3/4 milliseconds, call it 5, and we should be ready to try it again. In 3, 2, 1.
I saw a little debris pop off there. Look, dude, it's a perfect track where the lead has rubbed off against the steel.
That is really close.
Grant uses the high-speed camera to fine-tune the delay mechanism on the jaws. By tracking the bullet's progress frame by frame, he can estimate how many milliseconds the jaws are missing by and make the correct adjustment.
Okay, 1 millisecond. There we go. In 3, 2, 1.
The jaws are still missing by the skin of their teeth, but the bullet either splatters on steel or goes straight down the gullet.
I don't think with these you're gonna see it stuck in the mouth like the magician just caught it. I think it's just gonna squish right on through.
Even with precision timing, down to thousandths of a second, it's still proving to be one tough trick to pull off.
There's absolutely no way the human response time could remotely catch a bullet. I mean, we've got timers. This is the closest thing to a sure thing that we could possibly have.
time to try a different set of metal mandibles. These duckbills have a greater surface area. Maybe they'll be better able to hang on to the bullet.
3, 2, 1.
It's agonizingly close.
I can't say I'm totally surprised with the results, but this is as close as...
Welcome to our world.
Yeah, this is as close, I think, as we're going to get. If it can be done, we're right there on the threshold of it.
Lots of shrapnel.
6 shots in, success.
Oh!
That's got to be it.
It looked like it just exploded.
That's got to be it. It exploded inside the mouth.
When soft lead struck steel, the bullet basically melted.
Good job, you guys.
Nice.
We caught a bullet.
Nice.
Not much left of the bullet, but we caught it.
I don't know. That smear of lead, well, it's so unsatisfying. It'd be better if the bullet still looked like a bullet at the end. So, a slight change of tack.
For this series of tests, we've switched from the lead slug to a full metal jacket. This is a flat nose full metal jacket. It's got a thin copper shell. And we think this is going to give us a better chance of having an intact bullet at the end. In our test with the lead slug, it's like trying to catch a raw egg. As soon as you clamp down, everything squirts out the back.
Duckbill, full metal jacket, 99 milliseconds delay.
3, 2, 1.
Once again, it takes a little time.
That looks like we closed too early.
But eventually, bullseye.
Yes. Where?
In your face.
It's no use. The forces at work are just too great for the bullet to stay in shape. Still,
That's a caught bullet. That is a caught bullet. Just in case anybody disputes the high speed whatsoever, I'd like to point out these wonderful track marks and the little exploded bullet right here. This is amazing evidence we actually got to catch a bullet.
by way of celebration, they take a pot shot at a set of pearly whites.
In 3, 2, 1.
Oh, ow.
But the teeth bite back.
I got hit in the face.
Or what?
With a tooth, I guess.
Now, that'd wipe the smile off any magician's face.
All right, guys, catching a bullet with your teeth. Is it busted?
Well, we know that human reaction time isn't fast or accurate enough. We had to use electronic timers, and even then it was tough.
And human teeth just aren't strong enough. We found that out from the pig experiment.
But in any case, on impact, a bullet will explode, and that's what it's designed to do.
So, that sounds fully busted.
Busted.
Back at NASA, the MythBusters are testing whether helium-filled footballs fly further. They fired 20 air-filled balls and measured the distance of each one. Now it's time to fill the balls with lighter-than-air helium.
Oh, 13 pounds on the first try.
They fire off the first set of 10.
Bang!
And the exit pole's not looking good for helium.
Off the top of my head, just looking at how things landed, it looks like the regulation ball filled to 13 psi, regulation pressure, flies better than filling it with helium.
10 final helium balls finish off the experiment.
Dead on the money with its predecessor. I love that. I like consistent data. I love consistent data.
When they're done, they've got 60 data points for analysis. But first impressions are that this myth is coming up short.
Look, I mean, the myth is a helium-filled football will fly farther than an air-filled football. They don't mean by an inch or something. They don't mean by a foot. The myth is that there's a significant improvement. I think we could all assume that that improvement would be something where everyone would go, whoa, why did the ball fly that far? Wait, check it, hey, it's filled with helium, kind of thing. We're not talking tiny little differences. What we're seeing is tiny little differences.
And even though they've yet to crunch the numbers, early indications are that the helium balls have lost out to the air-filled ones.
Based on what I'm seeing so far, this is exactly what I would expect. There's not much of a difference, but in spite of what you might think, a lighter ball is going to be easier to travel farther, physics determines that if we launch the ball at the same speed and it has more mass, that's actually going to go further. So
it's all to do with inertia, which, according to Newton's first law of motion, states that the heavier an object, the more inertia it has, and the more resistance to drag. In other words, a helium-filled football should not fly as far as an air-filled one, fired at the same speed. So, does the experiment back up Newtonian physics? Or have the MythBusters blown a hole in the laws of science? Statistician Deborah Nolan concludes that the results are inconclusive.
Well, unfortunately, the difference between helium and air-filled balls is not statistically significant.
So
That doesn't mean there isn't a difference, but I can't see the difference in the data that you've provided.
To get a clear statistical result would require a sample of thousands of kicks, which just isn't possible.
I think the day we end up with time to do thousands of trials on something, Jamie's mustache is going to fall off.
But there is time for one final experiment, just to make sure that every angle of this myth has been well and truly covered.
I mean, the whole time we've been testing a myth about hang time, and maybe it's about something totally different, like transfer of energy. I mean, suppose helium is springier at 13 psi than air and would allow a kicker's foot to impart more energy to the ball and make it go further.
the machine we were using in the hangar seemed to me to replicate more of a throw than a kick. So maybe it's about time that we actually build a kicking rig.
So this myth goes into extra time. And to nail it once and for all, they're going to use a hammer.
There's your kicker.
Okay.
The A-frame from the bullet in the teeth pendulum test should do nicely. Some minor modifications, a high-speed camera, and soon the sledgehammer is ready to crack this sporting nut.
All right, let's try that, Jamie. We've got the camera cranked up to 1,000 frames per second. We're looking for how fast that ball takes off, what the exit speed is. If it's faster, it means there's a better transfer of energy, and we're going to try and find that out. So, first test, this is an air-filled ball to 13 psi.
Okay.
Is high speed ready? And 3, 2, 1. Thrilling stuff. Let's bring the hammer down.
By studying the high-speed footage, they can calculate the speed of the ball as it leaves the frame.
The hammer speed, which I'm measuring just to make sure each of our tests is consistent, was 18.5 feet per second. The ball's exit speed, this is good, was 31.25 feet per second.
That's the baseline for comparison. Now, for a helium football's last hurrah.
Okay, there it is, 13 psi, helium.
If this football's exit speed is higher than the air-filled one, then the myth is still possible.
In 3, 2, 1.
If not, then it's game over. So, what's the final score?
It's exactly the same speed as before. The 16 frames to travel 6 inches, 32 frames per foot, equals 31.25 feet per second.
Identical. The game's up for the myth of the helium football.
So, finally, the myth that a helium-filled football flies farther than a football filled with air, what's the verdict?
It's absolutely busted. It's not about being lighter than air, it's about having the ability to push through the air. So actually being a little heavier is an advantage.
Yeah, no, we found doing the math that if you kick a ball 70 yards, one filled with helium and one filled with air, the advantage is to the ball filled with air, but it's only about an inch. That's over 250 feet, 1 inch of advantage.
It seems that the designers and manufacturers of these footballs have already figured all this out for some strange reason, and these balls are pretty much maxed out in their ability to travel through the air. They're the ideal balance of weight and size and shape.
Well, I don't think this is the last we've heard of this, but I'm willing to call this one totally busted.
Busted.